Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Snapshot for episode 27. A bit of a different episode this week because I am a little bit sick, so we're going to be keeping it short, just going over some news. We actually didn't get to cover much news at all in our last episode with Lambie, which did very, very well on YouTube, by the way, and the back-end podcast statistics. I just want to thank you all for listening to that. Lambie, big shout out to him as well. It's always great having him on the podcast. I think those are genuinely some of the best conversations we've had, but yeah, I was really happy to see that. But we had multiple pages of notes written out for that podcast. We ended up talking about yeah. Well, I guess it was me, but we talked about one.
He's saying this like I deserve any credit for this. I don't deserve any credit for this. We
really talked about one bullet point, which was Bounce, which is probably one of the most important, important things happening in Marvel Snap right now. It's a very dominant deck, and we'll get into it later. Anyway, KM, your week in Marvel Snap, sir.
Honestly, it was pretty distracting because for those who are unaware, during this week, my cat, on Monday, we took her to the vet. It was about a month after her previous vet visit. So my cat, it turned out, had about 240 milliliters of fluid in her lungs. We got that removed. We spent more money than it cost me to get my shoulder cut open.
Oh, man.
And now she is at home. We got the relatively good diagnosis or potential diagnosis of heart failure as opposed to FIP. And so I've been a bit of an emotional wreck. That said, in Marvel Snap, I still did stream a couple times this week. And on those streams, I was able to rack up about 40 silver tickets and a couple gold ones, converting them. So my experience has just been that I feel like I'm in a little bit of a holding pattern until we see some balance changes, because I think I kind of know what the best decks to play are. I think I know what I'm trying to get done, and because of that, it's fine. I enjoy Marvel Snap. It's a great game, but I can't wait for them to change up this meta just a bit.
It's super interesting because I feel like as Snap players, we're so used to these, this previous OTA schedule and just the sort of the very dynamic meta that we've had in the past, I guess, month to couple months. And right now probably is in recent memory, a bit of recency bias, one of the most stagnant meta we've had. I don't think it's necessarily a bad meta, but there is really a dominant deck. And you can feel it. It sort of permeates through all of the Conquest matches you play, probably a lot of the ladder matches you play. And yeah, Bounce is really ending up on top right now. Cam, I want to ask you about the season reset and Conquest.
I want to be specific though, like Bounce, right? Okay, there are a couple things that are happening right now in Marvel Snap that I think are worth talking about. One, yes, the Bounce deck is great, but the Bounce deck with Invisible Woman, Killmonger, that's going to be the one that it just has very few bad matchups across the board. And so like a lot of decks with Invisible Woman, Killmonger, Patriot with Invisible Woman, Killmonger, and Shang-Chi, or Darkhawk with Invisible Woman, Killmonger, and Shang-Chi, all that stuff is real, right? And then the other thing that's happening in Marvel Snap that's really worth talking about is there's a bunch of bots on the ladder for everyone now. Yeah. And now there's like 8 million tweets about like, oh, I made Infinite with this deck. It's broken. And it's like the worst piece of shit you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, I mean, thank God Conquest exists. I mean, Conquest 5.0 is a good filter for some playable decks. But I was going to ask you about that because I also encountered a lot of bots, and I figured it was maybe because I played more ladder than I usually do last season because I was prepping for the CC UK. But so sounds like what you've heard from your chat and your own experience.
I'm seeing it consistently. Yeah. Like it's not like high elo stuff or anything. It's just like there's a bunch of bots now.
Yeah,
just a ton. And it's not even in high elo, like my rank, I am seeing bots that lose on purpose.
Oh yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Not Gigabrain bots. Yeah, I ran into, so I played up till about 80 something. I've been a little bit sick, but yeah, it was like 50% of my matches. Like, okay, I guess I just crossed this new boundary last season where I went into the new bot elo, but it seemed, I guess it's happening to everybody.
That's just everywhere. Like everyone is in bot elo now.
You reset to 73 as well this season? Was that everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did it correct.
I must have missed it.
Last season was a mistake.
Mistake, yeah. I was actually kind of hoping that would not happen. Which one do you prefer? Even though the last one was a mistake, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer going down 30 or being reset back to 73?
I loved going down 30 because it meant I didn't have to play ladder.
instant
like, because
rewards.
at this point, I there are so many just awful decks, and it's like, Eric, you're sleeping on this. I had a 60% win rate. It's like, look, my win rate from 73 to infinite was 75%, and frankly, in bot elo, if you're playing a good deck and you have below a 75% win rate, your deck isn't good. Like that's sort of where my thought process is at right now. Like 75 is the new 50. If you have like an okay record on ladder right now, climbing up to 100, I just assume that like your actual deck is like 10 games under 500, and your bots are what are putting that over 500.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if it is the bot situation is a mistake, or if that is sort of the new norm. I would hate to get back into this, back where we were before. But that being said, post infinite, I'm actually not even infinite yet because I haven't been playing. What is the situation? Is it how it was last season? Are you playing almost like 90%? I
haven't played a single game.
Both of
infinite.
us. Yeah.
But I have heard that there are bots there too.
Oh, bummer.
Which makes it like that. That was why I was just like, all right, I'm not doing it. I'm playing Conquest. We're done. We hit 100. I'm out.
Yeah, we do have Conquest, but that's a bummer that they sort of maybe backtracked into that the bot elo or the number of bots post infinite. That's a weird situation. Anyway, in regards to Conquest, how do you feel about Conquest Season 2 per se, with the rewards? Were you surprised? I know I was surprised that the border was the same. I don't know if they specified that
they had that was known. Like you being surprised by that is you being not plugged in.
Fair enough. But do you think that season to season maybe the border should change, or should it be the same one?
I think that for a mode that right now is, I think, relatively sweaty, even though the rewards aren't necessarily there for it, I think they hit a really good sweet spot, right? Like maybe they should make them look a little cooler, you know? Yeah. Maybe twist them up a bit, make it more clear that you got like the special fancy boy border. But no, I don't think they should. People keep coming up with suggestions for like, let's make Conquest harder. Let's make Conquest more exclusive. And like, personally, I just don't like any of those suggestions. I enjoy what Conquest is. Yeah. It's a fun mode right now. Let it be fun. Like, just stop trying to make it a tournament. It will never be a tournament. It's leagues in Magic Online. It's not a tournament. You want something hyper competitive, go play one of those. Yeah.
I think to play devil's advocate, I do think I would have a more fulfilling experience, although I acknowledge that I'm an outlier, and maybe how much I play Conquest, to have at least one sort of pinnacle thing to grind for each season, to try to go for that 5-0. Just a different cosmetic, maybe a different border. But like you said, that would probably make a lot of people angry, because getting 5-0 is genuinely challenging to do. It's hard.
Yeah, like I saw really good players struggling with it, and I don't want people to, like, if you're not going to give any loss allowance, it's entirely possible for you to be extremely good and just not get there. And, that sucks. It's a sucky thing to experience. And I think it's especially something that I'm sensitive to, because like one of the things that'll happen with me as a content creator is people will come in and use me as a barometer for like how many tickets is a good amount of tickets to have, right? Like, hey, man, how many infinite tickets you got? And what they're really looking for is validation that they have more infinite tickets than me. And I guess I'm sensitive to the idea of those kind of cosmetics, because there'll be someone will come in like, hey, Minnie, how many of these monthly cosmetics you got? And she's like, do we have to do it like this? I don't know if that's a problem that anyone else can really relate to. But it is definitely one of the things that sticks out for me is I don't want to feel like I have to have this or I'm less than. And I kind of, for that reason, enjoy the fact that, like, yeah, it's an infinite border. Maybe make it look a little cooler. Maybe like for like maybe do it in like 6 months increments. Here's the infinite border for this 6 months. But doing it for 1 month, I don't know. So, we already have like exclusive card backs for the season and stuff like that. I think that already exists.
So I think I can infer your stance on it, but I want to ask you a philosophical question, because Hearthstone did this recently. They came out with a tavern mode that rewarded a portrait, and you had to go 12-0, which is like ridiculous. I think it was standard as well. And people are really angry. Even though it was a cosmetic that didn't previously exist in the game, now came into the game, and this was the way you could get it, right? But players, what do you think about players feeling entitled to sort of a cosmetic or award that is meant to serve as aspirational content, right? It's meant to maybe not serve the entire community, right? Like it's the 5-0, it's the 12-0, it's that big thing that you strive for. Do you think that does it add too much negativity into like the psychology of playing the game? Do you think that those things are net bad for the game?
No, I just think that's not the actual issue, right? Like, what sucks about having to go, I don't know, 12-0 or whatever, is that even if you're really good and you don't accomplish it, people are going to use it to knock you down, right? That's what sucks about that situation, is if like you're a really good player. Like for me, going 11-1 is like not that far off going 12-0. Like I know that sounds weird, but if you go 11-1 twice, you're probably doing better than someone who went 12-0 and then like 0-12. You know, like you're probably a better player. But it doesn't represent that. And I think, you know, on some level, that's like every card game thing, right? Like no card games are fair in the small sample size that they're played in. They're not really like always going to be representative. But I think it feels a lot worse if you're someone who wraps your self-worth up in that, or has your self-worth wrapped up in that. If you're someone who's like, oh, I'm a good player, you should listen to me, and you don't have this 12-win cosmetic because you got unlucky or whatever.
Yeah, we just talked about it on Twitter, right? It's like we use the 5-0 as a filter to pay attention to the decks. And even though like someone could go 13-3, right? And lose the last match every single time. I mean, that player is probably better than the person that went 5-4, right? Where they went 5-0 and then they went 0-0-0. Yeah. Like yeah, it's a weird little sort of dynamic in the game. I wonder, you know, if ultimately, I mean, it's probably just too aspirational or theoretical, but like the paradigm shift should really happen with the player base to not be attached to these cosmetics as sort of a validation, right? But still have them as this carrot on the stick that we can strive for. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about the card acquisition changes because they're huge. I'm going to try to read through this. Like I said, I wrote these notes last week, but basically we're swapping over to collector's caches. Gold is completely gone. These caches will come in, at a time, and there will be, do you know the exact cadence and which new caches and they rotate?
Well, no, I know not the exact cadence. It's every 10, but we don't know where that starts. There are going to be people who are going to be like, all right, let me wait until I see where the exact locations are and then open up around them before I update the game. I don't know if they're going to have anything put in there to stop you from doing that. But I do think that is a play you can make.
Yeah. So, well, let's prelude that tip with something. The big tip is you can actually save up your caches. It's so funny that this system still exists because they've repeatedly said, yeah, in the future that won't be a thing, but they said that months ago, and we've been banking up caches to sort of try to take advantage of these kind of systems when they roll out new card acquisition or some sort of like variant blitz or something like that. But anyway, you can be saving up those caches, so when we do switch over, you will have the seasonal caches saved up. Like they don't snapshot as collector's caches. Anyway, there'll be like a few Series 4, Series 5 cards that come in them. Like I said, gold is totally gone. I'll just go ahead and read it out. In the collection track, every 120 CL, you will have a new spotlight cache. So Cam talked about trying to snipe it, opening up around. Basically, every 10th collector's reserve will become a spotlight cache. Each week, you can preview 4 cards that will be featured in the spotlight cache. It will contain 1 newly released card, 2 Series 4/5 cards chosen by Second Dinner, and a random Series 4/5 card. Can be one you don't own or a duplicate that you do own. Each of the 4 cards has an equal 25% chance to be obtained by opening the box. Once you get a reward, it is removed from the box, and the remaining rewards are split evenly to be opened. So like the chances are now even. Each week, a new set of 4 cards will launch. If you obtain each card from that week's set, a new set of variants. So the spotlight caches are never empty. The first 3 variants, so you can now open variants, will be spotlight variants. So these are special variants. And a mystery card will be a premium mystery variant. And a premium mystery variant is just a variant that is 1,200 tokens.
That's not true.
Oh, it's not? That's what I read.
It's a variant that is not pixel.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
Yes, it is a variant that is either 12 or 700, but not pixel.
Wow. What about for the people that love pixels? What the hell?
They are getting destroyed.
Oh, okay. So if you own any of the cards displayed during the week, you'll see spotlight variants. Some are time exclusive, picked by Second Dinner. We kind of talked about that. The mystery card will give you a premium mystery variant instead of a new card. If you already own that, rolls for you. You can get duplicates. The premium mystery variants are similar to typical, but yeah, this is what I said. But they can contain ultra rare 1200 gold variants and exclude pixels. I should have bolded the exclude pixels because that is hilarious. Currently, and this is what we talked about, you can hoard Spotlight caches, the current caches, and open them when the Spotlight Week, during the Spotlight Week resets and favors you more. You can also hoard cache reserves now until the update launches. Every 10th box will turn into a Spotlight cache. So there's the strategy. Some bullet points, goals being removed. Series 4/5 drops are also being removed. The amount of tokens you can get from reserve rewards are being reduced from an average of 5,000 per month to 800. If you're a Series 3 complete, the replacement reward is now 50 tokens, down from 100. Cam, what are your thoughts on this change overall?
Thumbs up. Generally speaking, for someone like me, I think it's close to a side grade where I have like every card anyway. So I'm just going to be, I'm going to be investing my 40 boxes into getting a new card the same way I would invest 40 boxes into getting a new card now. The issue, I think, is I used to be able to like buy bundles for tokens, and as long as that continues, I won't really feel, any type of way about this. I think a lot of people, there are two real downsides to this new situation. So I do want to say overall review, thumbs up for sure.
Yeah.
Downside number one, the fourth item in every box is a huge pain point because that card, it can be anything. It can be something you own. And if you get it, it'll be not even a special variant for that thing that you own, right? So instead of opening the new card, like instead of opening Jean Grey, you could very easily open like a variant for Snowguard or something, right? And not like a good variant for Snowguard, like a 700 gold variant for Snowguard. And so that's like a huge pain point. Like the downgrade in rate there is super, super significant because you have, new cards, special premium variants, and then, oh yeah, this is a 700 gold variant, right? Like there's a huge gap, right? Like even if you're a player who only values new cards, you still probably value the exclusive variants over a 700 gold one. Like you're still probably feeling some type of way about that. And so that's pain point number one. Pain point number two is that it lets you be stupid. Under the current system, you can't be stupid with your tokens. They cost 6,000. So you open your 40 boxes, you get your 5,000 or whatever tokens, you invest your gold into your collection track, you get more tokens, you do Token Tuesday, you get 6,000 tokens, you get the card you want. Here's the thing. Now, if you have 3 boxes, you might just gamble. You might just gamble that 75%er. The new system gives you the freedom to be dumb. And that means it also gives you the freedom to end up in those bad outcome scenarios. Because of course, 1 out of every 4 people is going to lose a 75%er. That could be you. And so if you end up gambling and losing, you're going to think, oh my God, this system fucking sucks. I got 2 variants that are super cool, but for cards I don't care about. And a card that like a 700 gold variant for, I don't know, Null.
Null's a good card though. Gas card.
Sure.
One thing I'll say from my point of view, so I'm sitting on about 25,000 collector tokens. And I kind of accumulated that through initially.
For real?
Yes. So I kind of accumulated that through whaling initially, but then I just bought, Token Tuesday. I bought like a gotcha banner here, not even really for the tokens. And I'm just kind of sitting on them. So when I look at something like this and I see the reduction of 5,000 per month till 800, I feel like in a way the value of these tokens that I've accumulated through opening the previous collector's reserve is actually gone up a bit because there's so much harder to get. I also think that this new system will actually incentivize me to maybe spend money because I haven't spent money in a long time. Maybe there's a variant bundle that pops up or there's something that I like and I'll grab it. But outside of that, once I became complete in my collection, I just never really spent again. And the reason why I have that many tokens is because of a sort of a paradigm we've talked about a lot, which is, I accumulated them expecting to maybe buy Series 5 cards, and then I just don't buy them. I only buy them if they're broken. If they're not, I just wait. And with the Series 4 and Series 5 going away, the drops, it's just an interesting spot. I do think that if we maintain the current system, me as this very much an outlier, right? I whaled quite a bit to get into that tokens. This might incentivize me to actually spend money again, which I don't know if I'm happy about, but with the old system,
I actually think your tokens get less value.
Okay, let's hear it.
What are you going to use them on?
Can you not buy them with tokens at all?
No, you can, but like you're probably just going to open them anyway. What are you going to use them on?
I guess. See, that's the thing. Is like now I'm incentivized to just open the collectors or like the actual reserves.
Right. Like you have all these tokens. You have 25,000 tokens.
You know what?
You're about to buy 5 ultimate variants, brother.
Pheonix, Thanos. Let's go. Like fine.
Like if you like that's the thing. Like if you have all these tokens, yeah, you can go get Jean Grey, or you can just do the smart thing because that's what you're gonna do anyway, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna look ahead and be like, I want this card. I want this card. Okay, I'm gonna save my boxes. I'll open Jean Grey. I don't care about Legion, and then you'll just open Jean Grey from that. And guess what? You're not going to spend the tokens on Legion because I know you. And so now you're in a situation where you just have all these tokens and they just exist. They don't do much for you because I do think if you just like pick and choose, 1 or 2 cards a month, you're going to be able to get them anyway.
Yeah. With the new system, you also need credits. Where the old system, I guess you did need credits for the free to play stuff, but you didn't.
Yeah, like where did your tokens come from? They came from credits. Mm-hmm. That's how you got them.
Actually,
with the exception of buying them directly,
you would be surprised at how many of those came from not credits. It's actually a lot. There are a lot of pay to win banners in Marvel Snap that have cool variants, so I buy them. It's an interesting system. I think overall, from what I've seen, it's like a net positive, at least somewhat, mathematically. Jedi mind tricks. Whoever's run the numbers, they've come back and they said thumbs up. Like this is generally good.
I've seen conflicting numbers, but I will say I saw some I would say misleading numbers in the early days.
Okay,
some numbers that I think overstated the downsides of the new system, and I don't want to speculate on motivations because I don't really know them, but I do think that once people were able to really dig into the math, it became clear that, for the most part, this was a pretty significant buff to basically anyone who's not in my situation, and roughly a side grade, depending on how bundles shape up in the future for someone who is in my situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the previous system, it was broken at so many levels too, because it was so prohibitively expensive to acquire a collection. It took so much time. And like we weren't buying Series 5 cards. And that's like, I have all those tokens because I
bought Silk because I wanted the rebate.
Silk is a good card. Silk's a good card.
I wanted the rebate and I still haven't gotten my rebate. Where's my 1,000 tokens?
I think I got that. I don't know if they issued it, but Silk is a 2/5 as a gas card. People sleep on Silk. I'm a big Silk believer. Anyway, those changes are coming soon. I want to talk to you a little bit about the meta right now. What do you expect for nerfs? What kind of changes do you think will come, and what would you hope to see?
The cards that need nerfs are the hardest cards to nerf, right? Yeah. How do you nerf Kitty Pryde and not destroy her? How do you nerf Hitmonkey and not destroy him? Cards like High Evo, I think that one's actually pretty fixable, right? High Evo, you just make Wasp only hit one thing, and then you say, okay, Hulk, it gets a static +2 and then +1 per soak, right? Easy. That's easy. Yeah. That's easy. You could easily solve Evo. I don't know how you solve Bounce. I don't know how you solve Kitty Pryde existing.
Yeah. Is Kitty Pryde? So Kitty Pryde, I think, is it's like the genesis of the problem, right? But the supporting cards in Bounce are also just really good. And we've talked about. I mean,
even before Kitty was back, right? I was playing a Beast, Hitmonkey, She-Hulk, Moon Girl deck, right? Yeah. It was one of very few decks that had a good win rate against the Black Bolt stature decks, right? For the same reason that Bounce now does. It just goes bigger, right? And that is, I think, I'm not saying canary in the coal mine or whatever, but Hitmonkey's been ridiculous for a while.
Yeah.
And I do think, maybe take a look at Hitmonkey and Kitty Pryde. I get that they're really hard to actually do balance changes to, but Yeesh, they are big numbers for not big mana.
Yeah. The thing about Kitty is I feel like Kitty is actually affected by wave in a sense, right? Like you still play the Kitty on 6 if it's like 10 power or whatever, but it does limit what you can do on 6. The thing about the hit monkey stuff is you just play it on 5 and it's freaking ridiculous. I wonder,
it's still huge, right?
Yeah, I wonder if Bast is a core issue.
Bast is the third one. Yeah. Bast is not a core issue, but she's the third one. After those two, Bast is the next one up.
Yeah. Hitmonkey fix is pretty easy, right? Like I think you maybe just make it +1. So kind of like
I don't know. I think that's kind of like killing him.
Too big. How would you do it? That's
the problem. Like that's the thing, right? Like the numbers on these cards, this is why it's so hard to balance cheap cards in this game. Mm-hmm. Because the numbers on them only have a couple levers. You can't really pull. Yeah. You don't have a lot of freedom, right? I've talked a lot about how much I enjoy the 4-cost balance in this game because there's so many little 4 costs that have their own little side quests you have to complete to make them good, right? And you can't really do that as much with early cost cards because there's just fewer levers to pull, right? You take Hitmonkey to +1, it's immediately terrible. So like, what do? You go like Hitmonkey to +1 and then you make it a 1-cost card? Is that like, how do you keep it good? Like you can destroy it. I can think of a million ways to destroy the card. Kitty's another one. It's like, what do? You start her at like -1. That doesn't even necessarily do anything. It just makes it more punishing when you don't draw her, makes her more reliant on Bast. Like there are not a lot of ways to make these cards more balanced other than blowing them up or raising their downsides significantly. And all that means is that like your game becomes more polarized around, did you draw them when your downside wasn't significant, right?
Yeah.
Did you draw the Kitty on 1 becomes even more important. Did you draw Bast becomes even more important. And it's just like, this is going to be a problem that recurs because cheap cards are hard to balance because you cannot put as many numbers on them as you can with a more expensive card.
Yeah. The reason that Bounce is overpowered is because numbers, the number too big with Bounce. Like the number is simply too big. The fact that you can play the Shang-Chi, you can put the tech card in there and you're still the best point slam deck, at least on the Delta, is too much. And this is another problem. I don't know if this would nerf Bounce enough, but if Bounce had to get priority for the power Kitty Pryde was accumulating, that would definitely, I don't know. It just, all those tech cards being
but
useless,
that's just like such a ridiculous thing to do, right? Because it's like saying, hey, rework the game to make specifically this meta better. You know that like little upkeep step that Kitty Pryde works in? Yeah, okay, change it entirely. Go back and take those 2 months you took to add that step to how the game works and then do it again because we'd rather do that than just nerf Kitty Pryde.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think that's a realistic solution.
I think you're definitely correct, right? That's not going to happen and it's way too technically complicated and it's definitely overkill. But when I think about things that make Bounce overpowered that are maybe not 100% intended, is like when they were formulating how powerful can this deck possibly be? What can people do with this card? They probably weren't thinking like, oh yeah, well they're accumulating this like increasing advantage throughout the game, but also dodging every single tech card that exists. It's like, so they can't fix it.
I mean, to be fair, I mean the Invisible Woman, Killmonger, like they're not dodging everything anymore.
True.
It's just there's a limited number of decks. And I think, honestly, there's a limited number of decks that want to try, and a limited number of people who really want to put the effort into beating Bounce when everyone just sort of expects, like, okay, this is going away soon, right? Like,
it's true. It's true. People do expect, people really do expect a nerf to hit. It's just, it's hard to guess what it might be. The funny thing about Bounce is that it's one of those decks where it's like, yes, it can be beaten. You can play the counter deck, but the counter decks are so narrow. Like they are not super great into everything else, and they're not very well.
Evo Lockdown still beats it.
Yeah,
like Evo Lockdown, yeah, absolutely still beats it. Right? Like I think there are decks that like reasonably can be played into it. It's just they have some other really horrific matchups in the meta, you know, and that's how it works sometimes.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, Cam, the new season, we had Rise of the Pheonix come out. What are your thoughts on the card Pheonix Force, which is a 5/6, says on reveal, revive one of your destroyed cards and merge with it. That card can move each turn. Have you been able to experiment with this card at all?
Mid. Mid. This card is so... Yeah, they're going to love that. You might have to turn it down. The card is so mediocre. I guess I can't really be mad, though. Like, some season pass cards have to be mediocre. It's okay. Nimrod's finally getting his time to shine, like, 4 months out, right? It happens. This is a card that has a lot of small interactions that suck. And I'm not saying if you fixed all the small interactions that suck, it would magically be a competitive card, but it'd be like a notably better one. One of them that I came across, for example, is if one thing has died and you put a Pheonix Force into Bar Sinister, only one Pheonix Force will be able to move because the merge only happens with the one Pheonix Force, and that is a prerequisite for it moving. Another weird, shitty interaction that I came across with this card was I was playing it with Black Panther Zola, with the idea being you go Electro, Black Panther, Zola, and then you'd have a Pheonix Force that was a Black Panther in that third lane. Seems pretty hard to beat, right? So, it is kind of hard to beat, but also it doesn't work the way you want. What happens is the Pheonix Force happens, the Black Panther on reveal happens, and then you merge. So instead of getting, 8 power from the Black Panther plus 6 power from the Pheonix Force doubled up to 28, what you get instead is the Pheonix Force's 6 power doubled plus 8, which is like 22. And it's just like, why? Why was that actually so broken that it needed to happen that way? I don't really get it. There's just a bunch of situations like that where it's like, outside of specifically, I blew up multiple man or human torch. And even then, it's like a little iffy because if it's Human Torch, you're gonna die to Killmonger. Good luck with that one, buddy. But outside of specifically that, it's just not a card that does stuff.
Yeah, doesn't really feel like a marquee card that you would build a lot of decks like around. I mean, it's cool. It's cool, but they've sort of historically kind of pushed it a little bit with the season pass cards. We did see a change of design philosophy after Zabu and Silver Surfer. We saw some more reasonable ones.
Hitmonkey came out pretty quickly after that.
I'd say Nimrod.
No one was saying
reasonable. Good. Yeah, Hitmonkey's good. Hitmonkey's good, but Hitmonkey came out after they took out Kitty Pryde, which is not a prerequisite to play Hitmonkey, but it's good with Hitmonkey. Let's be real. But Nimrod also, and definitely more powerful now after I got the stat bonus. So I'm happy that these season passes exist, but I'll tell you, Cam, and I think you'll giggle at my testing process with Pheonix Form, and it was like Pheonix Force. It was like this card looks kind of ass. I'll just let Cam test it. He's a content creator. He'll tell me how it is.
It's kind of ass. I hate to break it to you, but it is kind of ass. Sucks. It's true.
A lot of people kind of I saw a lot of talk on Twitter, and how talk on Twitter is, but people were complaining a bit about this season's infinite border. Do you have any thoughts, or is it just like, get over it, guys?
What, the card back?
Yeah, they don't like it. They think that the season pass one is much better, right?
Oh no, I actually like the card back.
See,
I might be the only person who likes the card back, but like the Pheonix Force season pass thing is just, it's so gaudy. It's like have you ever seen pictures of the inside of Donald Trump's house?
No.
Where it's just like all this, it's just gold. And it's like, oh my God, man. Like, Jesus. It's just like gold on gold on gold. It's like, I get what you're going for, but like, fucking chill out, man. And like, that's the vibe that the Pheonix Force card back has for me. It's just like, okay, I get it. It's like, but that is so much. There is so much on there. There's so many bright things happening there. Give me something minimalistic, stripped down. I like that.
Yeah, actually, I didn't care for either of them too much, but also the infinite card back is cool because it's exclusive. I think that if this one is not sort of your flavor, it's okay, because ultimately, I think most people like those borders is because basically off the fundamental ideology that other people can't have it, so this is the cool one.
People are such fucking liars about their motivations when it comes to stuff like this. In the beta, the only kind of variants you could not purchase in the shop were pixel variants. That was the only kind. So they were the unique ones. You had to open them on the collection track or the
I did not
season
know that
pass.
nugget.
And hilarious. People liked them then. It was like, whoa, I got a pixel variant. I remember this because I got a pixel spectrum. It was like, whoa, pixel spectrum, that's rare. And now pixel variants are the most common. Everyone's like, oh, they fucking suck. But it's like, no. They may suck, but you think they suck because they're common, not because they suck.
Mm. I did not know that little nugget of knowledge. That is hilarious. Yeah. That's really funny. Let's talk about, is there any cards coming out this month that you want to talk about, at least coming out in this Pheonix Force season? Jean Grey, Echo, Legion, and Mirage?
I mean, all of them. Let's go through all of them.
Okay, so we'll start with Jean Grey, 3/3, ongoing. Players must play their first card here each turn if possible.
This is the card that's probably been the most hyped, and it's because it just does something incredibly weird, right? Yes. Like, it does something incredibly weird that looks very powerful, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to experiment with it, but it's such a game warping and unique effect that it's hard to know what the actual impact it will have is until later.
Each turn. It is pretty wild. Do you see yourself playing this? What kind of deck? Is it in a Sarah deck, or like where do you see yourself playing this card?
It's in a deck that mitigates the downside. So I think a lot of people see like 3/3. Oh, we're playing Silver Surfer, right? But you're not doing Silver Surfer there, because then that means your turn 4 and your turn 5 have to go there, because you're only playing one card on either of those turns, right? So like maybe you are. What I think it really will make Jean Grey good or not is what your opponents are attempting to do, right? That's the kind of thing that will determine whether or not she's good. It's sort of like Spider-Ham, where like you put Spider-Ham in your deck, you need a good reason for it. Like I'm running Spider-Ham in my Lockjaw deck right now because I want to hit opposing Iron Man and Shang-Chi out of the bounce deck, right? You need to have a specific reason why you're doing this. And I think Jean is one of those cards where you need a reason why you're playing Jean. You don't just play her just to play her, I think. Because I would expect when she comes out, most people aren't going to be playing decks that they're sad to see her, right? So you need to have a reason to play her.
Yeah, very interesting. I was just sorry, I went down the Theorycrafting rabbit hole that turned out to be booty cheeks, but I was like, oh, is this the new Cosmo and Shuri or something? To like, force them to play a Shang-Chi on your armor lane. Doesn't work, by the way, because you have to play a Taskmaster there as well. It's gonna suck.
I mean, it doesn't work for like 8 million reasons. Well, most of them being that Shuri also only plays one card a turn.
That was the rabbit hole. It was like, no, this is
you need to be a deck that is comfortable playing a bunch of cards in a turn. Right? A deck that is, if you're comfortable playing on Morag, and you think your opponents are not going to be comfortable playing on Morag, this is a good card. But like one thing that's really interesting to me right now is like, Lockjaw decks have a lot of free cards running around, might minimize her impact, given there's like Mjolnirs and Lord knows what's running around out of those decks right now. So they're very comfortable playing on Morag, honestly.
Interesting.
And any deck that goes like super wide also is kind of comfortable doing that. Like if you're a Doctor Doom deck, you don't really care if you're playing Doctor Doom on the Jean lane. You're fine with that. You're still getting your stuff. If you're a Patriot Ultron deck, you don't really care. You also run Wasp, so you have the flexibility to like put that 0 cost in there and then play your 6-drop. Like that I think is going to be the real thing that like makes her, I think, a little bit worse than she reads is the amount of 0 cost cards in the meta.
Yeah, so think about the Lockjaw thing. So you would play this. You can't play this you could play this and then Lockjaw on 4, I guess, right? Because you can't play it in the Lockjaw lane because it gets cycled, and usually you play
No. I mean against Lockjaw. What I'm saying is like that, like the fact that Lockjaw is such a popular thing right now means that Jean Grey, like that's one matchup where it's like, is this anything other than a card that screws me over? Like that's because like you got to think about stuff like that. Like it's not just like you get to run this card for free. You need to run this card to gain an advantage.
Sure.
And so while I do think she is the most exciting card of these, I think she's also like I was really, let me put it this way. I thought Spider-Man 2099 was one of the most exciting cards of last month, right? Like exciting, not the same thing as fitting, right? It's not the same thing. And I think Jean is definitely the card that I'm the most excited to try to mess around with. But I also think, it's entirely possible that it's just a miss right now because there's too much 0 cost in the meta. And that makes her hard. If you're not restricting your opponent more than you're restricting yourself, you don't want to play the card.
Yeah. Assuming I'm not playing Bounce, the way I evaluate Jean Grey is I look at that card and I say, if my opponent played this against me, it looks like it'd be pretty annoying. It looks like a lot of decks I would play, I'd be like, this is pretty bad for me. Like, genuinely quite terrible.
Right, but like when you look at like okay, Bounce, Lockjaw.
Yeah.
So how bad is it actually?
It's a big lull if I'm playing those decks, but nerfs, right? Nerfs are coming.
That's the issue, right? Like it's like when you look at like specifically the decks that are, I would say, like what do we think those, like if you're going to play Conquest, you should be prepared to play those like what, 50% of the time? A lot, right? And so it's like, okay, how good is this really? Like, and then the real question is like, what are the cases where she's good? And the cases where she's good are like when there's not a lot of that stuff in the meta. In like a bunch of weird mid-range mirrors where like you're playing her and then like wave or something and keeping their power low or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of things I'm interested in, right? But I think she might fit in Sandman, maybe. As a deck that is just comfortable doing something like, I'm going to play Jean Grey into Sandman, but like, how do you fit her in your curve, right?
Yeah, it's tough because
so like Sandman is the kind of deck that would want her because you could do like, you could capitalize on it by doing just like Doom Odin in there, right? Like that's the basic thing that you want to be doing with Jean, but like, can you do that without playing Ramp?
Yeah, you can't not play the
It's just a very weird card at a very weird cost because like there are decks that do things that she would want to fit in, but it's hard to fit her in those decks because of the requirements that they already have. Like, is she ever just better than Sandman in those decks? I don't know. Like, there are just like interesting questions to ask. She's definitely unique and cool, but until like she's a card that can only be evaluated in context.
Yes,
and right now my fear is that the context is not great for her until Bounce, Lockjaw, like until this stuff is not, until there's not a bunch of extremely cheap, extremely powerful stuff everywhere.
Definitely. Jean Grey, it's definitely an innocuous card. It might be one of those cards. It might be deemed unpowerful for a time after it's released and actually, be discovered later. Like the card it reminds me the most about is something like Shadow King, which is not a very good card, but it's a cool toolbox card to have if you're heading into a narrow meta, like a tournament. Like those are some of the cards you look at, or like these kind of cards. Because this card, I mean, like we sort of mentioned a few times, like it could hose your opponent if they're on the right deck. So it's definitely
here's a place I do want to play her in.
Yeah,
I want to play her in Thanos.
Okay. Yeah.
I just feel like you can afford it.
Yeah, a bunch of stones.
Yeah, like literally, I just feel like you can afford it, and Thanos can run like all sorts of junk, and no one can prove it's bad. Like you can just put her in Thanos. It's probably fine. That's what I want to do.
Reminds me of the time that Thanos used to play Quinjet that would make your stones cost 0. That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Those were the days. Anyway, on to Echo. Echo is a 1/2. After opponent plays an ongoing card here, remove its abilities. What are you saying for this one?
I can't tell, man. This card, I feel every bone in my body is like, yeah, this card is terrible. Like, every bone in my body is like, this is awful. This is like it's a 1/2 that does nothing in probably 70% of games. But there are going to be, it's another thing where it's like, if you're ever in the market for this effect, it'll be pretty good, right? Like, I'm not saying Ghost is actually good, but I've played a Ghost deck before.
So have I.
It's completely terrible now, but like, I've done it. There are situations where that is what is called for. Like if you want if you're playing, for example, here's the situation. Here's the Ghost deck I was playing. It was a Thanos list that's like a Valkyrie Spectrum list. So yeah, you totally want to play Ghost in there. It helps your Valkyries. It's an ongoing card for Spectrum. It's great. It's a great fit there. It's not a great fit anywhere else. One of the questions I get a lot when I talk about like the Invisible Woman decks is like, well, why wouldn't you want to play Ghost? It's like a backup Invisible Woman. It's like, no. It's like a really shitty Invisible Woman. It's like an Invisible Woman that loses to their Invisible Woman. It's like absolutely terrible, and it dies to Killmonger. And Echo, I just sort of feel like there might be a situation where what she gives is what you need. If you're playing Wong and you want to protect yourself from Cosmo, and you can figure out a way to do like you put her there first, and they have no other ongoing things, and then you go like Wong, White Tiger, Odin, like that's the thing, right? Like there are use cases for this card, and And depending on, like, especially like the long stuff is like, that's actually pretty good, right? Like long White Tiger Odin is still just a very powerful thing to be doing. I mean, granted, you're still losing to like Magneto, you're still losing to Arrow, you're losing to even Polaris pulling the fucking Echo off, actually. But like, there are things that you can try to do with this card. Just everything in me, every like 1-2 that isn't getting you instant value
not good
has
enough.
just been terrible, right?
Yeah.
Just like absolute garbage. Like there's no precedent for a card like this being good, and that worries me. That said, there may be specific times when you want to play the card.
Mm-hmm. I think that this card is I think it will be bad. I think it will be bad on ladder, be bad on conquest. But if we end up in a hyper narrow meta, and this has some use case, it'll be good. This is a toolbox card. I feel like this is kind of like Jean Grey, but even more toolbox than Jean Grey. I'm happy this card exists. It makes deck building a lot more interesting when you are sort of competing in those more narrow metas, whether it's you're going for the 5-0 conquest and you can reasonably expect a certain deck, or you are preparing for a tournament. These are cool cards to have access to. But I don't think this is going to come out and be a banger. Next one, Legion, 5/7 on reveal. Replace each other location with this one.
This card is going to suck, but it's also going to win people games.
For sure. Yeah.
This card is going to be like not a card you can ever reasonably run in your deck. I have not found any real way to actually abuse it. I know the thing everyone's going to jump to is, okay, you play it with Storm, but here's the problem. You play Storm on 4. You play Legion on 5. The issue with that is when you copy the Storm flooding location, it gets delayed a turn. So what that means is those flooded locations will close up and your opponents will no longer be able to play cards there after turn 6, which is unfortunately the last turn of the game anyway. So it's not doing things here. So without a way for it to be a part of your deck's game plan, what you're doing with this card is you are YOLOing it. You are just like ripping it into your deck and being like, I'm gonna fucking get someone. I'm gonna fucking
and you
get
definitely
someone
will
this.
get someone eventually.
I'm gonna get someone with this. And the question just becomes like how often you are actually able to capitalize on these locations. I do think that there is a chance that ends up being more than I think. That the average game has a location that Legion is super good on more than I think it does. I think it is possible.
Oh,
but
it seems like a stretch, just like fundamentally.
Well, like think about like, okay, like there are other stuff here. Like think about like, okay, it opens up Kiln. Right? That's kind of cool. It gets rid of Death's Domain. It's location control, right? It's not just something you use offensively, but it's something you use defensively.
Let's switch the
switch the thinking.
Switch the paradigm, right? Instead of using it offensively, what if every single game you could pretty much, you're doing it on turn 5, this thing, you could pretty much guarantee that on turn 6, every location will favor you because you get to pick one out of 3. Yeah.
Like, what if it's just, people have always wondered, like, what if this is just the card that turns everything into ruins, right? Is that ever good enough to run? I think that's the actual paradigm that you want to approach Legion in. Because, like, it's not like you can do anything broken with him, but if you're a deck that's like, I can take my turn 5 to make sure that I'm not getting fucked by locations. Like that's suddenly, I actually talking through this, like that actually seems like, okay, maybe that's actually like kind of a real thing, right?
Yeah.
5/7, I'm getting rid of like anything bad, right? Yeah. Anything bad for me, I get rid of it. And anything good for me, I get it, right? That seems good, actually, right? Like that seems... I just think that it's like, especially because it's like turn 5, your opponent is already counting on that shit. They are like, oh, I won that Kiln. Oh, I'm going to win this Death's Domain. And then it's not any of those again.
I think this card might just be too expensive. Like on turn 5, I think it might be a little late. But I do think that it's like, that is a powerful concept. Is like, oh, I get to pick 1 out of 3 every single game and flip locations to my favor. Even if it's neutral or, flip them favorable or neutral. But because it's on turn 5, you're literally playing a 5/7 on turn 5, and your opponent plays, your opponent plays Hitmonkey, Mysterio, fucking, vomit power, right? And you play a 5/7, and then it's turn 6, and like you have a bunch of ruins, and your opponent's like, okay, Iron Man Kitty. It's like, okay.
Okay, what if you play this in your kitty deck so you don't get shit on by locations.
Yeah, I thought about that because I was thinking about Bounce, right? And what does Bounce lose to more than anything else? Honestly, more than it loses to tech decks is locations, like just bad location. I still
think about this like Legion. Like people talk about Legion with Storm, Legion counter Storm. Nice fucking flooded location, dude. It's not flooded anymore.
You could play this in maybe
I'm talking myself into this card, dude.
Maybe you could play it in Bounce, but you would, obviously you would lose the insulation against the wave. Like most Bounce decks are points.
No, I'm with you. But I'm actually talking myself into this. I think
it's a reasonable. It's like honestly, it's not as toolboxy or anything like that as like Echo. The question is having that favor for a single turn, because you're only going to have it for turn 6 while playing a suboptimal turn 5, a 5/7. Is that enough? Like, is that enough? And if the answer is yes, the card is good enough. If it's not, it falls into, it goes where every other card in Marvel Stop goes to die, which is like, it's just too low power. It's just like, you to lose too much tempo. I think that there's like a randomness to this card. And I think if you're looking at this card as a random card, like as a heavy RNG card, you're viewing it the wrong way. Because I think that if you're like, I'm going to take this card and I'm going to juice my opponent with like some random location that flips up that's very bad for them. That's not the use case. The use case is like you get 1 out of 3, which is pretty reasonable. And your turn 6 is all favorable locations. Favorable or neutral, mind you. Or neutral.
I also think the use case is just like absolutely fucking over people that are counting on. Like there are a lot of people we play Jeff in the Bounce deck sometimes. The idea is it just wins the mirror when there's a bad location, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of thinking along those lines. They're just like, we're just going to, if there's a bad location, we're going to take advantage of it. A lot of like assumptions that are made. And suddenly especially like getting stormed, like opening up that location again is legitimately a powerful thing to be doing.
Yeah. Cool card. It's cool design. All right. Last one. This one, I think this one might be the most normal card. Mirage, 2/2. It says on reveal, copy the lowest card in your opponent's hand, give it +2 power.
I think this card's actually kind of decent.
Yeah, it's good. It's just good on. It's
I don't know exactly.
On stats.
Yeah, it's like a 2/4 that draws you a card, right? Like that's probably pretty good. That's like I'm kind of super into that. Like a 2/4 that draws you a card. That's a really powerful thing to be doing, especially since it's a card that, for the most part, you're going to be wanting to play. I guess there's some situations where they're not happening, but like when you think about the 1-cost cards, the 2-cost cards that see play, they're usually not things that are super restrictive, right? You're copying a Thanos Stone with 3 power. You're copying, probably not a Kitty Pryde because that's on the board, but like an Iceman or a Spider Ham, and like that, that's probably pretty good. Like I think she's probably pretty good. I just don't know if she's like, whoa, incredible! I got Mirage. She's like a marginal upgrade, and frankly, I think the 2-cost spot needed it. There's a lot of just absolute ass 2-cost cards that I sometimes have to play, and I might be playing Mirage instead of them.
I feel like the 2-cost slot is like one of the most nerfed slots in Marvel Snap. That, and I guess maybe 1-cost as well, but 2-cost is like they hit the Lizard. What was the other? They hit the Mysterio. They hit the Angela. They always hit the 2-cost. That's why we have these booty cheeks 2-cost cards. I think if this card is 1 more power, it would be absolutely busted out of his mind. Like
if this card has 1 more power, it's like the best 2-cost card in the game, right? Yeah. Like if this card is 1 more power, it's eating Maria Hill's lunch, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And so the thing about evaluating this as a 2/4, pretty reliable if your deck isn't playing really hardcore on curve, but it's hard to get it over that 2/4 minimum. It's like how valuable is drawing a card?
You would play a 2/2 that said draw a card, as long as it was a card from your deck, right? Mm-hmm. So the downside here is that it's a card from their deck, right? And so the context that's going to define her is how often is getting one of their cards actually good? How often is it good? And how often is it better than running a different 2-cost card? Because I don't think necessarily she's going to be replacing Jeff, but there are going to be situations where it's like, all right, I'm about to get their Jeff. And it's going to be a 2/5.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
I'm about to get their Nebula, and it's going to be bigger. I'm about to get, when you think about the things that she is actually getting a lot of the time, they're usually pretty good.
So I think I wonder if you have to evaluate Mirage by thinking that assuming it's going to hit like a 3-cost, your opponent plays on curve, 3-cost lowest card in their hand. I actually think that Mirage is very well supported by Quinjet, right? Because, if you're not hitting the 1 cost, you get a lot of value off that Quinjet, reducing it by 1 value. And now you're looking, let's say it was a Jeff, right? A 1/5 Jeff. That's ridiculous. Like, that is
Pretty
so
good.
bonkers. Yeah, I could see it. If you can find a deck that can run Quinjet, whether it's a Thanos deck or I guess one of these Darkhawk decks with Moon Girl, or not Darkhawk, but Dino decks with Moon Girl. I can see it. I think that it's probably the most clearly powerful card that's coming out in this season.
I don't know if it's clearly powerful. It's the one that I understand the most, right?
Yeah,
like that. Like I don't think saying clearly powerful is the right way to phrase it. I think it's just this is the one that has the most analogs that we have the least amount of figuring out to do with. We just know what this is, and it looks like it's pretty good. The question is, how good is pretty good?
All right, so full circle. I just want to say, and I'll get your thoughts as well. All these cards coming out this month, it feels different than sort of the batches of cards we've gotten in past seasons, and I'm pretty happy with it. That none of them feel busted must buys, like this is gonna break the game, no high Evo, stuff like that. But all these cards seem like they are stretching design like a little bit. They're actually changing the way you can fundamentally interact with the game, which is cool. I feel like that's the way we expand in Marvel Snap than trying to get a card that just does plus more power for plus X efficiency, right? Like, these cards are cool.
I mean, that's Mirage, to be fair.
It is.
Mirage is just like, hey, it's like kind of a 2/4 that draws a card. Yay!
Well, yeah, and to be fair, we also went through all the other cards. We're like, I don't know about the card we see Mirage. We're like, okay, that card's okay. We're like, this card's okay.
It looks pretty okay. Yeah. It looks like above par is basically like where I would put her, right? Like, the range is, she's probably never going to be like, oh, this is awful, but she might not always be like, the greatest card of all time. I'm actually, I think if I were to say which one of these cards that I think not necessarily the most excited for, but like the most likely to see play would probably be her, just because I think her downside chances are very low.
Yeah, I agree with you. On that. Awesome. Well, anything else you wanna wrap up with before we close out for the week, Cam?
How'd you like the new view? I'm head on here. I'm looking, but like I was still looking down for a lot of. I don't know. Let me know in the comments how you liked the new view. You like the stairge? You like that? Let me know.
It's funny because your shirt also has someone doing the same stare. Exactly. I think it looks good. Awesome. Well, yeah, a bit of a shorter. I guess we said it was going to be shorter this week, but then it wasn't.
It's never shorter because it never happens.
It's never shorter. Anyway. Sorry, we didn't have a review this week. Basically, if you want to review the podcast, it's the number one thing you can do to help us out. You can go to ratethispodcast.com/snapshot, or you can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Again, it helps us very, very much. There's a video version of this on YouTube, youtube.com/@the_snapshot. Hit that like and subscribe while you're there. We're climbing slowly, but we're doing it, and we're advertising. And despite all you people who think we're not. Twitter, Brendan APG, Cam Best.
Crazy.
I'm trying. Cam Best MS. Cam, your Twitch schedule.
God only knows. Because of the cat stuff and because my girlfriend's birthday is Monday, my schedule has been completely obliterated. But hopefully we'll get back to 6 p.m. and just go, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with like a break day in there or something like that. That's sort of what I'm aiming for next week. Hopefully there'll be some fun stuff to experiment with. Hopefully Jean Grey hopefully Jean Grey gives me a good couple days of, playing around, right? So I'll be back on Twitch the first day of the new, the new acquisition system. Mm-hmm. And I have 70 boxes. We're going to be opening some boxes.
I thought I had a lot. Holy cow. Well, if it's not Jean Grey, it will be the Balance Nerfs. Yes. We will see a shakeup in Marvel Snap very, very soon. Although I don't hate this meta. It is just the most consistent is a word we could use.
It's fine. I'm just a little bored.
Exactly.
It's really all there is. It's fine. It's actually pretty balanced. I'm just a little bored.
Yeah, that's the thing about Marvel Snap is like we've been spoiled. This is no other card games function like this. Other card games, you're stuck in those metas for 3 months, 4 months, maybe 6 months. It's crazy. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. See you next week.